Hi everyone, and welcome back to the Global AI Student Conference. We have something like 40 minutes until the end of today's conference. So let's welcome our four panelists, Kevin, Gabriela, Noah, and Ajit. Hi,
Hello, everybody. Hi.
Hello, everybody.
thank you for joining us. So we'd like to know you better. I'll start with Kevin, who saw you in your presentation. We have some technical difficulties, but we have to say a big thank you for the such informative presentation you gave us about how to build and deploy deep learning models. So we have some students that
My
have
pleasure.
just joined the live stream. So could you reintroduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Kevin McFall. I am a Master Instructor with NVIDIA's Deep Learning Institute. So I teach a lot of workshops all over in terms of deep learning, different technologies. Before I came to NVIDIA, I was a university professor and worked in mechatronics engineering, so did a lot of robotics, computer vision, AI, and deep learning. Interestingly enough, all of my degrees are mechanical engineering, so I sort of backed into AI, but once I found out about it, I couldn't let go. So glad to be here with you all today, and nice to share my experiences with you.
And the final question before going to our next panelist. I saw that you have an amazing international experience. How many countries have you worked, lived, or studied?
Well, I guess the short answer to that is I've lived, worked, or studied in four different countries. I'm originally American. A funny thing, though, I never got my first passport until I was 23. So I really didn't do much traveling until later in life. But I've been in Sweden, where I was a student as well as a faculty member. I did my PhD at Georgia Tech's campus in France, where I also taught. I did my master's thesis in Japan, and I now work in Germany with NVIDIA. So it's fun to be around the world and get different experiences.
That's amazing. So, our next panelist is Gabriela. Gabriela, could you introduce yourself?
Thank you. Yeah, so my name is Gabriela de Queiroz, and I'm a principal cloud advocate manager at Microsoft. So my focus is on AI, ML, and data science, and our customers are the students and educators. And I'm very excited to be here with the panel, sharing a little bit about like my knowledge and my wisdom, I would say. But I'm originally from Brazil, so you can tell it's very fun that we have people all over the globe here. I'm originally from Brazil, but based in California.
Awesome. So, and I saw that you have an inspiring community contributions all over the years. Can you share your experience from founding Art Ladies and AI Inclusive?
Yes, I love community. I love to build community, to be involved with communities. Our ladies, let me talk about our ladies a little bit. So R, as some of you might know, it's a programming language that was created by statisticians and for statisticians a long time ago. But nowadays R is being used by different people, like you can say like data scientists, data analysts, journalists, biologists, like from all over the domains. And Our Ladies is our organization to bring more diversity into the art community. So I founded Our Ladies in 2012, and it's a huge community. We are in over 60 countries, in more than 200 cities across the globe. And we have over 100,000 members, so it's huge. And AI Inclusive, it's another community which is more focused on AI, where it's language agnostic in some way, so there is no language. But the idea, it's very similar when we are trying to change the landscape of AI. We are trying to bring more diversity. We are trying to empower communities to get into AI and try to make the difference in this area.
That's fabulous. And I'll just interject and say congratulations on Our Lady celebrating its 10th anniversary this year. That is such a huge accomplishment, and it's so amazing that it's impacted so many people from all around the world. And now I'll pass it back to Fotini to continue introducing our amazing panel.
So, Noah, hi and welcome to the studio. Can you tell us a bit about yourself?
Sure, yeah, happy to be here. My current role is at Duke in the data science program and also in their AI program. And a lot of what I focus on is building out curriculum for MLOps. I don't know if there's a little bit of an echo. Is that on my end?
Sounds great for us.
Oh, okay, it sounds great for you.
Yes.
Okay. But yeah, most of my work is really on operationalizing things, and that's, I think, a very interesting focus now in industry is that there is a lot of the initial work has been started with data science, and many of the things that we're doing are really like a laboratory, and just like you wouldn't go into a laboratory and, I don't know, start trying to make substances out of the laboratory to sell in a retail store. Likewise, the same problem exists in machine learning AI, where we have some rough edges, and really there's, I think probably 2023 is going to be the year where there's going to be a huge operationalization methodology, probably because of recession as well, where there's going to be a focus on really traditional software engineering approaches to machine learning. And that's really the stuff I'm focused on.
Thank you. And we saw that you have published so many technical books. We would love to hear about your experience publishing technical books.
Yeah, so in terms of technical books, I would say it's an interesting process because on one hand, it isn't necessarily like a very lucrative thing to do. So a lot of times after I write a book, I'm like, why did I do this? But I think part of it is that it's kind of a fun thing to at least write one book, and I think more books that are written, the better. And I think anybody that's in the technical field can write a book. There isn't really a unique trait involved with writing a book other than just doing it. And in some sense, it's an excuse to just work hard for a short period of time, or to learn something. A lot of times, if you're able to, write down all the different things that you're learning, that type of mentality is one of the best types of books to read, because of the fact that you're approaching the subject from a learner's mind. There's an expression called the expert blind spot, and it's really true in that the deeper the expert is, a lot of times they are missing what they're explaining to you. And it's talked about a little bit in is it Daniel Kahneman's book about, thinking fast and slow, where there's type 1 and type 2 thinking. Basically once you know something, then it's automated. But if you are learning something, you have to actually really pay attention to the details. And in fact, that's actually one of the best types of authors, is someone who doesn't really understand all of the things that are going on, and they're really careful about explaining it from a beginner's mind.
So thank you. And our finalist panelist is Ajit. Hi, Ajit.
Hello.
Could you?
Hello. Hi.
Hi. Could you also introduce yourself?
Sure, yes. So I'm based in London and Oxford. I'm a course director at the University of Oxford, and the course we teach is Artificial Intelligence, Cloud and Edge Implementations. As it says on the box, it's a full stack AI course, and we've been teaching that since about 2017. So we have a fairly good detailed experience of both the algorithmic side and also the MLOps side. So in terms of, I'm also a fellow at Oxford, so and that's on the engineering sciences side of things. So that's a little bit different. But I guess that's the best way to define what we do. And in many ways, Oxford's a very collaborative thing. So for example, we're looking at something about AI with quantum, we're looking at AI with cybersecurity, I'm involved in AI with digital twins. So it's like they kind of a branch out with different areas, and these are collaborations within other professors at Oxford. And this is our focus. That's what we do. Yeah.
And we have a final question and for you. So you do a work in a really innovative AI spaces, including digital twins, metaverse, and quantum computing. What has been your most favorite application of AI throughout your career?
Aha. Okay. Um, so I think so. You asked me the most favorite application of AI. Is this correct?
Yes.
Okay, so I think that the most favorite application of AI, which is very hard, which is what I'm trying to do, and I've been working on it for about 3 or 4 years now. And this is something which I think Noah mentioned about System 1 and System 2, Daniel Kahneman, and so on and so forth. And we are trying to use AI to detect phenomena called cognitive dissonance. So cognitive dissonance is not deception or not lying. It's when you're conflicted. So it's a very complex phenomena for AI to detect, because you have to sort of do multimodal analysis. You have to sort of do almost what Kahneman was saying, that there's a very interesting video which talks about Yoshua Bengio saying that it is not possible for AI to detect such a phenomena. And I think that that's one of the things I've been working on for the last 4 years, working on the research paper on that subject. So it's good fun. Hopefully I'll get there.
That's absolutely amazing. I really appreciate all of you introducing yourselves, as well as giving a little bit of like fun facts about who you are. And that was actually a fantastic kind of bridge into our next conversation, which is like kind of first projects in AI or advice for those learning about AI for the very first time. And our very first question is for Gabriela. What are the first projects you did at school or work in the AI artificial intelligence space?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I think when I was in school, we didn't have AI, even like data science. I'm a statistician by training, so I don't think we exist as a title anymore. Like we all became data scientists or some kind of like AI engineer. But at work, this first AI project, I don't know if it was a project or was like I was trying to learn how the whole AI works, and I would get some pre-trained model and then use on my own and see the application. So I did a lot of like understanding so I could teach later on. So that was kind of like the project, like object detection, some kind of like object detection, but always kind of like reusing something that other people did, because it was like an easy way for me to understand how AI works without like needing a lot of like infrastructure, for example. So that's how I got. I remember pretty much the object detection was the one that I stuck with me. That I was impressed. I was like, wow, this is amazing. I had no idea that we could do things like this. And then seeing the whole applications of like different areas. So that's what I did.
That's amazing. I think even like the thing of like looking at what others have done, even like I remember going to my very first hackathons in college and seeing what like the winning teams are doing, super innovative stuff. And I was like, wait, is that something I'm capable of doing? So extremely relatable.
So how about you, Noah? What are the first projects you do in your school or the work in AI?
Yeah, so I am a strong believer in building end-to-end prototypes, and I would recommend, and I do teach this actually for the classes at Duke, is I recommend students immediately build end-to-end prototypes. It could be data pipelines, it could be MLOps pipelines, it could be Streamlit or Gradio applications. And one of the nice things about building an end-to-end application is that you care less about the technique and more about the goal at the end. And a good analogy would be if you're walking into Costco, you could put on several different roles. You could go into a Costco and you could become like a restaurant, right? You could go into Costco and buy 50-pound bags of flour and then 50-pound, bags of salt, and, essentially make a restaurant that creates pizza. You also could become a vendor, right? You could actually do, catering, and you could buy a bunch of frozen pizzas, and you could actually go out the door and you could do that. You could also just be hungry and decide to, on the way out of Costco, go to the pizza place and just get a slice of pizza and eat it, right? They all are essentially the same thing, but they're just different forms of pizza. Similarly with AI or machine learning, that it really depends on what it is you're trying to do. But if you care less about what it is that the technique initially, and you build a prototype, you can get to a solution much quicker. And in some sense, I think even the shorter the time frame, the better. Where if you could build it in like a day, or you could build it in 2 days, it really could harness your ability to create a solution. So I think pre-trained models with Hugging Face and using things like GitHub code spaces to fine-tune it because they have GPU has been really an effective way for students to build compelling prototypes in the courses I teach.
And I think you also lead a multi-cloud certification program for students. Are there any certifications you recommend students consider when learning AI?
Yeah, I do recommend that. I think students should try to get at least a couple of the solutions architect certifications. So not just one cloud, like get an Azure certification, that's solutions architecture. Get a AWS certification, maybe get a Google, doesn't matter, get one of those. And then also get a couple for machine learning for clouds as well. And so in terms of machine learning, I've actually worked on courses on all of the machine learning products for the major clouds. So I've built something for Azure Associate Data Scientist, which is essentially like a machine learning engineer certification. I've also built some material for Google professional machine learning certification, which I think is also pretty good, and also AWS machine learning certification. I think any of those machine learning certifications are great. And so I think those are probably if I had to start as solutions architect from any cloud, machine learning certification from any cloud, that's a great place to start.
I think that's absolutely amazing. And now our next question is for Kevin. And so you have experience and expertise in both like the professional and in the academic space. So I'd love to hear what your advice is for students who are looking to get their first experience or skills in AI.
Yeah, perhaps the best thing is today, in today's day and age, you have so many options open to you, and it kind of depends a little bit on the type of person you are. There's so many different trainings and certifications, like what Noah's talking about. Even NVIDIA, we offer different certifications and trainings. There's so many that you can get. I mean, you can learn everything on the internet, if you go out there and find it. And if that's sort of the way you like, if you like to be independent and you like to chase the things that you're interested in, by all means do that, because you can find the projects, you can get involved in Kaggle competitions, you can do all that. But if that's not, that takes a lot of self-motivation, and maybe you'd rather work together in a community like what Gabriela's doing, where there's people that come together and you're doing things together. And, maybe you're the type of person that needs a little accountability, be with your friends, or have a meeting every week that gets your butt in a seat that you're going to do it, And so, especially through these community actions or through your school, there's so many different classes you can take, of course, but all the student organizations. So there's so many different ways to get involved and to learn, and find which way works for you. Go that independent route if that's you. Go the social way if you want to be together with people. But the information is out there, and there's so many different ways that if you're excited about it, you're sure to find some interesting way to get you those skills. So keep trying different ways and find what works best for you, and just keep trying, because it's super fun.
Thank you. And so let's go next to Audrey. So, as the director of the Artificial Intelligence course at the Oxford University, What advice do you have for students that they want to get their first experience in AI?
Sure. So I think that what I see um, is that you should be ambitious, and what I mean by that is now I think, as Gabriela said and a couple of other people said, there's so much choice. There's so many things you can do, and the point is that you don't want to do something very simple with everybody else is doing. Don't just get a sort of the Boston housing data set and try to do that. I think that it's more interesting to choose a problem which you like. To choose a complex problem, and I'm not talking technically complex, just to something which is unique, to something which you can showcase out there, and then build up on that, on that end to end, meaning that you try to say that this is how an end user would use it, not just the ML part, but put it in Flask, put it on a website. How would you serve the model, that type of thing. So this would be my advice, and I think that to a large extent, I mean, it's a great time to be learning today, because there is so many resources out there, as we've been saying as well, and also there is so much support. Again, like we've been talking about the various communities and the various forums and the various approaches. So I think that I think the world is a good place. I mean, the world is a good place if you're learning something now, and it's a supportive place. And I think you should leverage on that if you're just starting out, and you should be ambitious. Is what I meant here.
I think that advice is extremely valuable, and I think is also, once again, a fantastic bridge to our next topic of conversation, which is like the skills and interests students should develop in AI. And Noah, our first question is for you. And so you teach a wide variety of classes in AI, machine learning, MLOps, AI, data science. Are there any skills or areas of AI that you think are especially important for students to learn?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think one of the most underutilized skill is DevOps. And the reason why DevOps is so important is that you can never have too much. And the more DevOps you know, the better you will be at AI, the better you'll be at data science. There's essentially no upper bound. And the reason why it's so important is it's about really two things. It's about automation, and it's also about data science. And believe it or not, DevOps is, in a sense, one of the most prolific forms of data science in the software industry, because in order to understand what's happening with the software system, you have to have monitoring and instrumentation, you have to have load testing, you have to look at your system and understand latency. This is data science. There's no other way to put it. It's a classic data science problem. And a data scientist, in a sense, can really thrive with DevOps, because all of those skills you have in mathematical understanding, the foundations, plotting things, it really comes in handy for data science, which is about understanding how things work and automating things. Likewise, once you understand the entire point of DevOps is to make things automated and improve, that's also very similar to data science, in that the whole point of machine learning is you train a model to get some kind of outcome, and you improve it with more data or better techniques, etc. Same with DevOps, is you more and more automate things, you get less tools, simpler workflows, faster deployments. And so it I think is one of the most under-taught aspects of software engineering. And in fact, it's very straightforward to learn DevOps. And so I would encourage people to start there. I think that's probably a good place. The other skill I would actually agree with AJ here is that I think the other thing that is missing is sometimes the passion. So if you want to stand out, you should pick a project that you're very interested in, and it should be something that's unique. Fortunately, the world is full of very complex problems that do need further insight. We have, misinformation problems, we have income inequality problems, global warming, We have, gun violence problems in the United States. We have just so many problems that would benefit from people really doing comprehensive analysis that's based on passion. And so I think if I had to pick two things, it would be that is be passionate about something, pick a real problem that helps solve the world, and then also get very, very good at automation and DevOps.
And I actually have one follow-up question for you there. And I think because DevOps and MLOps are words that we've heard throughout the day at the Global AI Student Conference. So I'd love for our beginners in the audience explaining like what makes MLOps and DevOps similar and what also makes them different.
Would you like me to go, or?
I would love you to go, Noah, but if anyone else has commentary, feel free to jump in as well.
I mean, I could start with like a 30-second summary, which is that if you don't have DevOps, you don't have MLOps. I think that's the first heuristic. So if you're saying you're going to do MLOps but you don't do DevOps, you have to start there. Once you have DevOps, then really the next part is what are the parts of data science that can use those same techniques, and that would be the model and the data. And once you have the model and the data also automated, and you have instrumentation and logging and automatic deployment, then you're essentially doing MLOps.
So can I go next as well? Yeah, sure. Yeah. So what I see it as what I in very simplistic terms, I see it as CI plus CD plus CT. So CI is continuous integration, CD is continuous deployment, which is the traditional DevOps piece, so CI and CD. And then you have CT, which is the continuous training, because the whole point about MLOps is that you build a model and deploy it, but then it suffers from data drift or various other forms of sort of mismatch between the real world and what you build it on. And therefore the goal of the MLOps space is to create that feedback loop where you are able to trigger the retraining process. So in my mind, it is CI and CD and then CT on top. So this is how I see that.
Yeah, the other interesting thing on this is MLOps is newer, at least the term. It's newer than DevOps. So like we all heard throughout the past years about DevOps, it was like more common, especially in the industry, to have a DevOps person, someone that would be hired as a DevOps and doing the whole infrastructure for the development. And usually this person would sit within the engineering team. And as the machine learning models got more complicated, more sophisticated, and more data, we kind of like branch off DevOps to MLOps. So now we have all this branch nowadays. There are courses and classes on MLOps. And before we didn't need, because we as a data scientist, we did a lot of like offline modeling. So we would not do in real time. It was like we didn't have enough either computer power or enough even data to do something on that scale. In so big and something huge. So MLOps is like, you can see more and more being introduced also as a role inside companies.
So thank you. Our next question is actually for you, Gabriela. And we saw that you have experience in both AI and open source. How do you think the skills of these fields intersect?
Oh, there is a lot of intersection. Pretty much everything that we do in AI or everything that we use in AI is based on open source projects. So I'll give you some examples. So TensorFlow, like we use TensorFlow, we use PyTorch. There are so many other open source projects that we use to do AI. And one interesting thing is in terms of like skills, I like a lot of work when people do work on open source for a variety of reasons. First of all, you can showcase your contribution in the project that it's open, that anyone can go and see. So if you are a student, it can be something small, but not less important, which is like you can fix some typos or documentation issue or create some documentation or translation. So You can contribute to open source, and you can add that to your resume. For example, when the hiring manager see that you contribute to open source, that is like thumbs up. Oh, this is amazing that you are doing some contribution to open source, that you are helping the community, that you are being there for projects. And the skills, like again, the skills, they change, but they do not change. You can move no matter which area you are doing. So open source go across not only AI, but across domains.
I think that's fantastic. I've heard so many stories recently about how people contributed to the open source community and it resulted in like the job they have today and like the work they're currently doing. So like hearing it, it's so true.
Exactly. And like in several companies, they hire you to work on open source 100% of your time. So they hire you, all you do all day long is to work in an open source project, which is amazing because the majority of like the open source contributors, they do that as a side project, but the lucky ones do that as a full-time job.
What an amazing job for like the tech community and for students hopefully in the audience to aspire to. And now our next question is for Ajit. And so in your role, you combine AI, I have specifically with cloud and edge computing. You also combine AI with a ton of other different facets. But how do you see these skills of like AI, cloud and edge intersect?
Sure. So for us, it started off with a full stack AI challenge, and we saw that both vertically and horizontally. So when I see horizontally, we're talking about MLOps, yes, essentially. When I see vertically, when we're talking about from everything from cloud to edge devices, and for us, when we say edge, we are talking about essentially sort of thinking about the cloud and the IoT together. Correct. So when we talk about that, we mean, and because we are talking about an AI course, we are not interested in too much about the connectivity of the bandwidth issues and so on and so forth. Although we do cover some of that, the objective simply is that how do you train a model in the cloud and deploy it in an edge device, and the path to that is typically through a container ecosystem, correct? So you put it in some kind of a Docker container, you put the Docker container on the device, or you put some sort of a some other mechanism, but you would typically go somewhere around that direction. So this is how we see it all come together. So for us, it's a very natural thing to think about it in that way. And we actually originally come from sort of the engineering sciences part of Oxford. So we have good links with Oxford Robotics Institute and so on and so forth. So we have the sort of that kind of pedigree of kind of working with physical devices for that reason. In other words, what we don't do is typical financial services type things, correct? So we don't do, for example, insurance or something to do with fraud detection. Typically, the large portion of current I guess data science applications, which we exclude from that. So we focus on a relatively smaller area by thinking about cloud and edge, and that seems to be okay for us as a niche.
Thank you for sharing your thoughts around AI and edge technologies, which is actually and my favorite area of AI. So, Kevin, you also work in the area of AI and you focus on deep learning technologies. So, what do you think is the best way to learn deep learning technologies?
The best way to learn it?
Yeah.
Well, I think sort of echoing what these folks have been talking about is do it. Practice it, try it out, get involved, do open source, do Kaggle competitions, do something. And one of the things I've seen with the students that I taught, the ones that were the most successful in this space, they were really talented at taking different pieces from different places and putting them together and integrating them together. So, learning how to look through an API documentation and be able to use it, figuring out how to fit this piece together and get them to work together and tie them together. That's really important. I'm sort of old school. I liked to write all of my code from the very beginning, from scratch, and have total control over everything and write every line of code. You can't do that anymore. Things are too complex that you have to use what other people have been doing. So, that skill of stitching together work that other people are doing, figuring out how to get the APIs to work with each other, that's definitely the most important skill. I would say, because writing code from scratch, that's not going to work. Today's just too complicated. Figure out what's out there, how to get it to work together and solve the problem you're doing. So for sure, my most successful students in this space were really, really talented at that.
That's absolutely amazing. And now we're going to transition to our next topic, which is diversity, inclusion, and ethics in AI. And Gabrielle, our first question is for you. So you have extensive experience in making AI an inclusive space through organizations like Our Ladies and AI Inclusive. And how do you consider diversity and inclusion in your work in AI?
Yeah, so like in AI in general, and again, in general, it should be something that we all think about from the beginning. So one of we saw like a lot of issues with AI models being changing people's life and affecting people's life. So we had some very terrific, like awful, I say awful cases where people went to jail, or like a lot of like problems that the AI models were causing. And one of the root causes was like the people behind the team creating those algorithms were not diverse, or they could not go through all the cases because they didn't have a diverse population working on those models. So that's the very beginning. And even if you think about the data, you need to make sure that the data is diverse in terms of like it's getting all the possibility populations, every little piece, instead of like, oh, I am this and this is the data that I'm looking in, I'm using. So it always starts with that. Also, like when you have like a diverse team, you have a diverse set of ideas, background. So every person has something to contribute, instead of like everybody saying the same thing over and over and over again, and then creating also like bias throughout your model. So I'm a huge believer that we should be thinking and doing AI, thinking about the ethics, thinking about the implications. So I always tell people, teach, like when you are creating something, think about, do I need to do this? Do I need to create this type of thing? Like, is there anyone that is going to be affected by this negatively? So think about like, what are the consequences, the bad consequences? What are the bad behaviors that your model can create, instead of like, oh, I'm going to make a lot of money. Yes, but is this going to affect negatively a lot of people? And if so, how? And how can you mitigate this type of like issue? Like, how can you mitigate bias? How can you make sure that your model is, I don't know if it's free of bias, but at least like it has like less bias.
Mm-hmm. And I don't want to move away from the diversity, equity, inclusion topic of AI just yet. So I'd love to hear from the panel, like if you have like any personal experience from your life, from your projects, from developing, writing books, from writing courses, of how you ingrained like the inclusive principles into the work you've done.
Sure, I can go for that. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Yeah, okay. So from our perspective, we are very proud to have from our core team at Oxford, of the 6 people who lead the course, it's 4 women and two men. So it's a very high female to male ratio, and I am the director of the course. But I think that the way this happened was also quite interesting. It's not an intentional thing, but it again shows that when you have a level playing field, you have the best people come through. So Dr. Amita Kapoor, we used her book. Aisha Mutlu was looking after all the coding sprint. So there were 2 women, and the other 2, Marina and Anjali, were the best students in the first 2 batches. So we started from 2017 onwards, and the first 2 batches, I basically took in 2 of the best people on the course into our team. I think, again, this is how we ended up with this core team in this configuration. But again, it is something we are very, very proud of, because I think that it's certainly a very diverse ecosystem, especially in this area. The other thing is my own personal perspective is I am on the autism spectrum as an adult. So I think it's quite interesting that my perspectives of the world are a little bit are different, and we've always encouraged students, especially in Oxford, who are strong on maths and science, to mentor them, especially if they have specific neurodiversity challenges. So yeah, I think that's is my view of the world, and I think that again, I think that there is a lot of support for diversity today, and that's a good thing, and we should encourage that. Coming from a pretty different culture and sort of trying to understand different things, I think that what we are seeing here in the West, and especially large companies like Microsoft and Amazon and Google and so on and so forth, there is a certain ethos of inclusion, and I think that's a good thing.
Yeah, I'm happy
A
to.
coincidence that the old
go.
white guys are the last ones to talk. But go ahead. Let's see. What do you have? Please.
Sure. Yeah, I'll say one of the things I think that's a fascinating way to look at the problem is to look at it from a systems perspective. And there's a recent book that I really enjoyed reading by Thomas Piketty that talks about this concept of inherited wealth and some of the problems that it causes globally. And on the flip side, in really the culture in many parts of technology is that, wealth is good, or, greed is good, essentially. And I think one of the issues with that is that now if you say that the only way to build things is through maximizing capital, that one of the problems with that is that now you're actually not looking at the negative externalities. And so there's tons of negative externalities that we should care about, right? We should care about whether people have housing, whether they have medical care, whether they're subjected to violence, whether you can actually hire people in a diverse way. I mean, there's essentially a huge quantity of problems that are very important that need to be put into the equation, other than just pure maximizing wealth. And if you look at some of the things that have happened recently in technology, like, for example, the crypto problems, you look at the recommendation engines, really what are the people that are behind this actually promoting? They're promoting wealth as the number one metric for success. And it's easy to find this. Just go to Twitter, and there's lots of people just saying greed is good. And there's nothing wrong with people being entrepreneurs and building stuff out. But I think if you look at, in particular, some of the ways that we've designed machine learning systems, like recommendation engines in particular, and we look at what they're actually doing, I think you could even make the argument that they should be illegal. I think you can make an argument that some forms of recommendation engines are so toxic to humanity that they should actually be made illegal. And a great example of this is in the United States. If you build a pool and the pool is exposed to the world and there's no gates, and it's got, I don't know, like lots of sharp edges on it and weird things, you can get sued because someone has decided to walk into your yard and they can drown in your pool. It's called an attractive nuisance. Similarly, I think the technology industry really needs to have a day of reckoning about what's actually happening. And I think one of the ways that we can do that is what other people have mentioned, is actually thinking about what it is that we're optimizing for. Are we just optimizing for engagement, or are we just optimizing for profit? Because the results of that could be, even in a sense, worse than some of the scariest things in the world, which are global warming and nuclear warfare. We could even have a bigger problem even before those get hit, because if no one understands what's true anymore, how do you even have a society?
Yeah, very well said. And you've got us old people, that are talking about this stuff, and there are many of us that are young people. I think they have a different perspective on things. They value more than just that money, like you say, Noah. At least more are. And so we've built this technology that exists, and I think the more we talk about this and bring it out in the open, that this younger generation is all about that. They are going to pick those projects that are going to try and help people and do good things. And I think I'm really encouraged to see that the younger generation, I think, is really pick this up and do perhaps a better job than we have in the past of making sure that AI works for humanity, that AI works for society, and AI works for the planet. That everything moves in the direction of trying to make things better. So I'm very much encouraged by that.
Thank you so much for all of your amazing commentary on this. And we've reached the end of our time. So first of all, thank you so much for such an engaging conversation. But we still have one final topic. So we'll do our final topic in like a speed round, and you have a choice. We had two final questions for each of you. One was, what was the future of AI? And if you had any closing thoughts for the audience. So I think we can start in any order, but either or if you want to answer both, it's completely up to you. For what you think the future of AI is, and any closing thoughts you have on the panel or this topic.
And the future of AI is going to be unpredictable. I mean, now they're talking about forward training and no back propagation anymore. Transformers destroyed. Poor recurrent neural networks are basically non-existent in NLP. Just be prepared for the unexpected and be ready to pivot. That's my best suggestion for how to stay abreast of things.
Yes, I think that the future of AI is unpredictable. I would agree with that. To me, the real question is whatever people call as AGI. Will that be real or not? And the reason for that, in my mind, is because until about 3 or 4 years ago, I used to start with this Arnold Schwarzenegger thing, the Terminator thing, saying that that's AGI, and that's not coming. That an autonomous entity from space can come and function in a human ecosystem is not going to happen in the near future. But suddenly I'm not sure about that anymore, because I think that when I see so many rapid developments in such a short time, it is sort of what Kevin was saying, that it's unpredictable and the rate of change is very high. So, I mean, think about Alvin Toffler and people like that who talked about this future shock concept, correct? And he didn't take into account this rate of change. And I think that I think I would say, but it's a fun industry to be in. I genuinely enjoy it. So yeah.
Yeah, I agree. It's unpredictable and very scary, because like we cannot follow. Like, things are advancing and changing so quickly, and when we think something is not possible, boom, someone goes and invent and do, and we are like, oh yeah, now it's possible. Like, things that we had no idea that would be like right here in this generation, in this, or like in the past 5 years. It's like the changes are so fast, so quick. It's hard to follow. And I don't know, I think it's like in some ways are the what is coming is kind of like scary. Like, I just want to, hey, let's stop, let's go a little bit slower. I'm afraid of like the implications. But at the same time, it's like we go with the flow. We need to be flexible so we can move to one thing and the other, so we can like go with the wave. But it's an interesting field to be in. It's like always change. We are always learning, always evolving, and going ahead.
Yeah, I can say that I think in the short term, we do know what's going to happen, which is that the AI assistants are going to be very helpful for people. And a great example of this is the Copilot technology with GitHub. I think it's amazing for students. I use it every day. If you look at the autonomous assistants for driving are also extremely helpful, like automatic braking, those kinds of assistance where there's a human involved. And so I would say in the next 3 to 5 years, students and other professionals that embrace those assistants will do very, very well. And then long term, I would say the thing that I'll just recap what I said earlier, which is if the only goal of the world is to optimize for pure wealth, I think we're going to have some days of reckoning that could end the world. And so if we're able to actually put some guardrails in there where we don't only care about wealth, but we also care about the equality of things that are happening in terms of opportunities, in terms of the the people that can't speak for themselves, then we're going to have a much better outcome with AI.
Thank you so much for all of your insights. I wish that we could pick your brains longer because I can tell that you're all just so passionate about AI, about your respective fields, and I think that there's so much more we can learn from you. But unfortunately, we've reached the end of our time. But I'd like to thank you again, Ajit, Gabriela, Noah, Kevin, for coming on to the panel today because we absolutely enjoyed having you as our final event of the Global AI Student Conference.
Thank you very much. Thank
Definitely.
you, everybody.
My pleasure.
Take care. My pleasure. Take care. Bye.
Bye.
And that wraps up the Global AI Student Conference. Thank you so much, all our guest speakers, the audience, our moderators, and everyone that participated in this year's Global AI Student Conference.
And we look forward to seeing you at future Global AI Student Conferences. And with that, goodbye.
Bye.